When we purchased our property in 2018, we arrived here and I was filled with all of these plans and dreams. I was going to turn this property into my lifelong homesteading dream. I wanted to have big gardens, I wanted to have livestock, I wanted to raise a lot more, at least, of the food that we were eating and be able to know where it was coming from and how it was fed and treated and all of that. And I knew that the first livestock that I wanted to have on my homestead was chickens. All of the advice that you see from experienced homesteaders and gardeners and farmers to people who are new at it is to get chickens first. They're easy to raise, they're fairly small. In terms of livestock, they don't eat very much, and they're supposed to be the gateway livestock that teaches you what you need to know to be confident to raise any livestock that you can dream of. It took a little over a year to get enough property cleanup and done and renovations done and infrastructure built to be able to consider chickens. And so I brought home my first baby chicks in the spring of 2020, in March and April in 2020. Everything went well pretty much for, the first probably 20 weeks of their life. I grew them out in the house. I had to move them from my office area into the garage when they started getting a little dusty, and then we built a coop outside, and then they eventually moved out into the coop and run area, and we then had to expand the run a bit, and everything was going well until they started losing a lot of feathers. It wasn't the right time of year for any of them to be molting, and it didn't look like the pictures that I was seeing online of when chickens molt. My chickens some of them had bare necks and heads, some of them on their back right above their tail, and all of them pretty much had a really bare butt. All of their fluffy butt feathers were gone, and I couldn't figure it out. I kept inspecting them, even with magnifying glass, trying to see, did they have lice? Did they have mites? Did they have a skin rash? I couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. I wasn't seeing any bugs on them of any kind, and no particular skin ailments or anything, and I just couldn't figure it out for months and months and months. Finally, one day I was reading in some chicken forums about an entirely different topic, but somebody responded to the poster, and in their comment they mentioned something about depluming mites. It's a specific kind of mite, and they are microscopic. You can't see them with the naked eye, and also, even if you could, they burrow into the feather shaft and under the skin, and they cause depluming for the chickens or whatever birds to lose feathers. So finally I felt like this is a plausible explanation, because I can't find any other explanation. And so I started taking steps to treat them for mites, for depluming mites. So I treated all of my 14 birds individually, and I also entirely cleaned out the whole coop and the run. And I treated all of that too. And then you have to do that whole process again 10 days later. And we did all of that, and they started really getting better and being healthier, putting weight back on, and some of them started growing feathers in. But some of them didn't really grow feathers in. And I wasn't sure for a while, should I treat again? Should I just wait? And I sought out some advice from some friends who know more than I do about chickens, and they said they may not grow feathers in again until it's naturally time for them to molt and grow new feathers in. And that was just such a depressing thought for me, because when they started losing feathers, it was in November, and here we were halfway through the summer and they still hadn't grown feathers back, and I'm like, I have to wait until a fall molt now. And that turned out to be true. The rest of the birds did not get their feathers back until they molted this fall. But I was still nervous in early fall because they didn't molt at the right time. They all molted late. So for a whole year, they didn't have butt feathers, most of them. And some of them had, at the back of their head it was bare, and on their backs at the top of their tail was bare. And that's ultimately why I didn't really share very much about my chickens their whole first year of life, because it was embarrassing, and I was ashamed that this thing that's supposed to be so simple, everybody said this is the easiest thing in the world to take care of. It's easier than dogs to take care of. And I couldn't get it right. And beyond just being embarrassed myself about it, I felt really bad for my chickens. I don't ever want an animal to suffer needlessly. And, that's ultimately, it really didn't help my state of mind very much. I really was concerned that if I can't even keep the simplest livestock, how can I keep a whole homestead going? But in the end, they did grow their feathers back, and I did a lot of things to help them down that path. Besides treating them appropriately for parasites and treating the runs and stuff, I also had to kind of nurse them back to health. So changing the way that I was feeding them for a while, and making sure they had even more run space so they weren't crowding each other, being very diligent about preventative treatment of the coop and the runs, and keeping their spaces clean, like even more diligent than you normally have to be for chickens. I learned a ton over the course of that year. For a while I really felt like a failure, and then it wasn't until later when I'm reflecting, going, okay, that's not failure, that's a learning curve. That's, I had to have some experiences, and this was mine, and now I feel much better about it. There's two more over here. So this last year, because I wasn't sure last spring that I was going to be able to figure out what was wrong with these birds and be able to fix it, I didn't get any new birds. I didn't get any other new livestock at all. I really wanted to make sure that I could figure this out and I could fix it, and I could properly care for any kind of livestock before I tried something new. So here we are in January of 2022, and all but two of the birds have now molted. Two of them are going through molt right now, this late in the year, and finally starting to get their feathers back. All the rest have all their feathers back. They're looking really good. Some of them who had lost weight before are putting weight back on. And now I feel pretty good about where I am with my current livestock. We have expanded the whole chicken area more now, and I think this spring I'm going to be ready to finally bring in some more laying hens at the very least, to make sure that we have egg production through next winter, because it really dropped off this winter. I know I can supplement light. I decided not to do that so far this winter. I might start doing it soon though. But gosh, that was a sharp drop off from 14 chickens, most of them laying every day, to now it takes over a week to get a dozen out of all of them. And honestly, I'm surprised I'm even getting that much. So I want to have some first year birds over the winter next year. But I'm also considering some other livestock now. I'm not sure entirely what our plans are going to be for homesteading, because some of our life circumstances have changed, so I may adjust the plan. So I'm considering other kinds of birds, ducks, turkeys, quail. I'm considering things like rabbit. I'm considering pigs even. Originally I was considering dairy goats, but I realized we don't actually use that much dairy, and if I was gonna do it, I would probably want cow milk and not goat milk, because I use more dairy products than I use actual milk. But I don't think I could keep up with the production of a cow. I don't think we consume enough for that, and it would be like constant management of milk and cream. So I have some decisions to make on that in the future. But I think dairy is just not going to be this year. But I am considering some other options. So I just want to encourage you, if you are just starting out with homesteading or really any other endeavor, and people are telling you, oh, do this first, it's easy. First of all, take it with a grain of salt. Second of all, you need to believe that you can do things even if they're hard. And third of all, take it as a learning experience. Like, I could easily have just given up, sold all the birds or butchered them or whatever and said, never mind, this isn't for me. But I'm really glad that I didn't do that. I learned how to take care of birds properly. I learned about parasites in birds. I learned about space needs, and I got to share this whole last year and a half with these 14 birds. So even though it was a pretty rough year, and for a while I was embarrassed about it, I'm feeling much better about it, the whole thing now. And I'm actually, although I'm not glad that they had to suffer through that because of my inexperience, I'm glad to have had the experience. I wouldn't wish it on anybody because it was really pretty rough at certain points, but it was very valuable for me. That's all I've got for you today, friends. I hope you enjoyed this video and a little look into my failure turned success, and I hope it gives you some encouragement for anything that you're setting out to try that's new and different. And we'll see you on that very next video. Blessed be.